because my youngest has more unusual ideas on what he likes. So stick around if you want to hear from my youngest and what his favorite ones were. A little bit not as traditional, let's just say. Hi friends, welcome back to Calm in the Chaos Homeschool. If you're new here, my name is Davine and I homeschool 4 kids who are right now 11, 12, and 15. And today I'm going to be sharing with you their top picks as far as read alouds and readers that they can think of in the past year or two or more. So today is also a collaboration video hosted by myself and Shauna from Homegrown Homeschool. And if you happen to be a homeschooling YouTuber who puts a lot of homeschool content up, we would love for you to join in these collaborations. So if that applies to you, just comment below and I can send you a link to the Facebook group that we use to organize these collaborations. We would love to have more people join us. So basically, there's going to be a bunch of homeschooling moms who are going to be joining in on this collaboration. I will link in the description box below a link to a playlist, and they will all be sharing their favorite read alouds and just books from this last year, these last few years, whatever they want to share. So if you want to get a whole bunch of really good book recommendations, definitely check out that playlist when you're done watching this video. Okay, so like I said, I have 4 kids and I asked them to share with me what their favorite read alouds and readers were, and this is the pile that I got here from them. So I'm going to be sharing from my oldest down to my youngest because my youngest has more unusual ideas on what he likes. So stick around if you want to hear from my youngest and what his favorite ones were. A little bit not as traditional, let's just say. So I'm going to start with my oldest. The ones that my oldest shared with me were this one here, The Bridge Home. This is set in India. It is about 2, I think, runaways who end up living on the streets. And so it talks a lot about street children in India and sort of about their lives. This one is one that I did research and I created. My last video was on readers and read alouds and things that we're doing as far as the India region, because we are studying the Eastern Hemisphere this year. And so this was one of the books that I had for her to choose from. And so she chose to read this book and she's really, really enjoying it. So she picked that as one of her favorites. And just before I forget, I will be linking links to any of the books I mention in the description box below if you want to take a closer look. The next one she picked was also one of our readers this year from the Eastern Hemisphere.
So this is Editing Davine here. I really hate it when YouTubers don't actually say the name of the book that they're holding up. So this is Shadow Spinner. I just realized that I didn't say the book's name here at all.
This is more in the Middle East. This is a story based on Sherazad, and that is the person who supposedly told all the stories of the Arabian Nights and things like that. I think it's a bit of a spin-off on that story. I haven't read this one myself, but she really enjoyed that. And it is also a Bookshark / Sunlight suggested either read aloud or reader. So based on that, I think it's probably a pretty good book. So that is another one of her picks. Another one that she picked was one that I talked about last year because we read it last year and it was a really, really fun story. I don't have it anymore, so I can't show you the cover, but I will link it up here. It is Follow My Leader. It is about a boy who is in an accident and he becomes blind, and it's his story of learning how to live as a blind person. He gets a service dog to help him, and so how that dog helps him, as well as his journey towards forgiveness of the person who caused his blindness. So this one was a really great story. If your kids love dogs, it's a really good story with some really good teachable moments. And it's just really interesting to see the world through this boy's eyes as he's trying to figure out how to get around in this world that he used to be able to navigate so easily, how he goes through the steps of being able to navigate it in a different way. So that is a really good book. I did read that book with my kids and I do highly recommend it. So that was Follow My Leader. The next two books are books that both my 15-year-old and my 12-year-old daughter picked. And so they enjoyed I Rode a Horse of Milk White Jade. So this book was based in Mongolia. It follows more of a girl who lives in Mongolia. And she has a disability where she's not able to walk. So that makes her very hard to be marriageable, and all she ever wants is to have a horse that she can ride in a race and win in a race. So basically, it is her journey to finding this horse that's going to be her horse that will allow her to ride a race and win this race and basically just feel more free. So this one is very interesting. It does have a lot of kind of Eastern mysticalism, if that is something you are not too interested in, but it is interesting and it is part of their culture. So I guess my girls really enjoyed this one. I thought it was a little weird at times, but they enjoyed it and it went really well when we were studying Russia area. But this is based on a girl in Mongolia. This is also Book Shark and Sunlight read aloud pick. Now, this book is one that was also one of the readers that I allowed my kids to pick from when it came to the Middle East. This is The Princess and the Foal. It is actually based on a true story of a princess who is still alive in Jordan, and she became I think she ended up winning races and stuff, equestrian races. But my kids really enjoyed this. Now, my 12-year-old, she is a hard one to please. She doesn't often say that books are good or she really enjoys a book. And she said several times how much she enjoyed this book. She's also not like a girly girl who loves horses and stuff. So I was interested when she picked this because of the cover, princess and horses, and a little bit pinkish. So I was a little surprised when she picked this as a reader, but she really, really enjoyed it. And so it's just a look inside a princess's life, a Jordan princess's life, and how this foal that her father gives her changes her life. So now we're moving into my 12-year-old picks. So besides her, The Princess and the Foal, she really enjoyed a book that I don't have to show you, but I will link it here. It is The Wild Robot Escapes. So I believe this is a read aloud that we listened to on audiobook last year. So she just pulled that out. She remembered it and she really enjoyed it. That is part 2 of The Wild Robot. I know lots of people were talking about that series last year. I feel like everyone was talking about that series. So we listened to The Wild Robot and then we listened to The Wild Robot Escapes, and she enjoyed that one. It's a little bit different, a little more sci-fi. It's about a robot who kind of has feelings, and it was an interesting story. Now, I don't know if I would want to have read it because I don't like the way the language sounds, kind of like The One and Only Ivan. That book, I read that book, but it was so choppy, I did not enjoy reading it. So I think listening to it on audiobook really helped me, and I felt like The Wild Robot was a little bit like that as well. But so many people really like it, so it is definitely one that you might want to look into if your kids might be interested in a robot who ends up like on an island and makes friends with the creatures on the island and just kind of has an adventure. So another one she chose was 7 Daughters and 7 Sons. This was one of our Middle Eastern books. This was also a Sunlight or Book Shark read aloud recommendation. My now 12-year-old son, he also really enjoyed this book, so he picked this book as well. So this one we did as a read aloud. We just finished it not too long ago. It is based on, there is a father who has 7 daughters. The father with 7 daughters, he's in a lot of trouble. He's not a great businessman, so he doesn't have a lot of money to marry off all his daughters. So they don't have dowries, so they're not going to be able to get very good husbands. And so his middle daughter is quite ambitious and wants to be an entrepreneur, and she wants to save her family. And she convinces her dad to let her go to take all of her dad's savings and go to this other city to make money for her family so that they will have money to be able to marry off all the different sisters. So that is basically what it's about. She does have to disguise herself as a man in order to do that based on the time. So she does that, and of course, she is successful. But it is a bit of a love story. She does meet a prince, and they kind of fall in love, but they don't know that they can be in love because she is dressed as a man, and he does not know that he's not sure. He doesn't know what's happening. So there's a little bit of that, but my kids really enjoyed it. So it's a bit of a love story, a bit of adventure. It is it took a bit of time to get through this one, but I guess they really enjoyed it because I think maybe 3 of my kids picked this one. Yeah, I think my oldest daughter might have said, "Oh, I like that one too." So that was a popular one for my kids. Now, this one is one that we did as a read aloud audiobook in the car. I really loved it. I would definitely recommend it. And it is I Am Malala. This is the Young Readers Edition. It's the one I picked because of my kids' ages. We all really, really enjoyed this book. I think all of us would say that we really enjoyed this book. So I would say if there was a winner from all the books of these, this might be the one that we all enjoyed the most. So if you don't know too much about Malala, basically she's in Pakistan, and she is there during the time when the Taliban start taking over, and she basically fights for the right for girls to have an education. So it was not only well written and interesting from her perspective, but it's like a true story, and my kids learned so much about just what it's like to be Muslim, and then what it was like for this kind of terrorist organization to take over, and just sort of the things that she had to go through to fight for her right to an education, and just the difference that she's made in the world. So this was really, really good. I would say definitely not for more sensitive children, but it is the Young Readers Edition, so it was okay. She does get shot at some point, so things like that. But my kids, so they're 11 through 15, and my youngest is not super sensitive. So that worked well for us. And I just really, really recommend this one. If you're studying like that area, the India area, the Pakistan area, and what's happening now, it's just really relevant and was such a good book. So that one, really recommend that one. All right, so now we're moving in to my 12-year-old boy. He basically said he liked both of these as well as this next one here. And I really think that we have all been really enjoying this one. We are still working on this one. So we're not finished it, but we have really, really enjoyed it. This is Teresa of Calcutta. It has been better than I thought it was going to be. Now, it's very similar to the Heroes Then and Now series, which we have really enjoyed, but I have maybe enjoyed this even better. The writing is so easy to understand. Her life is so interesting. Just how she went from a girl who's kind of in the Turkey area to Calcutta and working among the poorest of the poor, as she would say. It's just been a really great read. So we have been really enjoying this. I would definitely recommend picking this up for your family if you are interested in some stories of true life people, and just written so well and so interestingly, and at a very pretty easy reading level, probably grade 5 reading level. Yeah, so really excellent, excellent book. And I'm trying to keep it from glaring too much. That one has been a really good one. I think a lot of my kids have really enjoyed that one. Okay, so we come to my youngest son. He is 11, and his tastes are a little bit different from I don't know, the typical average child. I'm going to start with the one that is the least odd for him to pick, and that is Red Sells to Capri. I have the feeling he picked this one because it is the first read aloud we have ever done in our homeschool. So this book I read aloud to my kids our first year of homeschooling 3.5 years ago. And I will tell you, it was hard to read this book to my kids. Not because of the book itself. I think it is a little bit slow in the beginning. It does get more interesting towards the end, but because it was our first read aloud. And any of you who have come into homeschooling a little bit later might understand what it's like when you're trying to read for the first time to your kids and they have like zero attention span, and how frustrating it is. So he remembers this book. He remembers that he really liked this book. And so that was the first one he mentioned, was Red Cells to Capri. So I don't know if it would hold everyone's attention. It was a really good book, but it is a little bit slower to get started. But I think he just has some fond memories of it, perhaps. And so that is the one he picked. This is a Sunlight book. So that is why we were reading it. All right, so next in his choices is this one. We just finished this one. It is The Narrative Life of Frederick Douglass. Now, I would not read this aloud to your children unless your children are maybe in very upper middle school or high school. This book was recommended as history in our Beautiful Feet books, intermediate, modern, and American history. And it is not an easy read as far as the language as well as the content. It is very real life. It is stuff that Frederick Douglass experienced as a slave in Maryland. And even in the preface, it says that he actually is like where he was actually a pretty decent place where they did not treat slaves quite as badly as other places. Even so, he talks about some very hard things that happened. And I would say if I had known exactly what was in this book, I probably would not have. I did the YouTube reading of it because the language was so hard. And so then I couldn't edit it very well, like, you know, how you're reading and you can edit things. So I couldn't edit it very well. Though Beautiful Feet books does have you skip chapters. So I don't even want to know well, I guess I could read them. He would want, my son would want to know what are in the chapters that we skipped. He doesn't know that we skipped some chapters. So a good read, very interesting, very eye-opening. I would definitely recommend it for high school students. If you're going to do it with middle school, I would pre-read it or listen to it ahead of time and just make sure that that is the level of details that you want your children to know about what happened to slaves in America back in the day. So, very informative book. I do recommend it just for older students. And the last one he picked, I don't know if he totally understood the assignment, but he picked the Hindenburg Explosion. This is not exactly a read aloud, even though I did read it aloud to my boys. It is a information book, so fact finders, about the Hindenburg Explosion. So this is about a balloon from Germany that ended up exploding because it was filled with hydrogen. Back in those days, they used hydrogen, and they don't really know exactly what happened, but as it was coming down, it exploded. And so this is just the type of stuff my 11-year-old is interested in. So we have been doing guest hollows, actions, and reactions course this year, and we've been learning about hot air balloons. And so he really enjoyed this one. He likes things like that. So if you have a boy who likes explosions and disasters, that might be one for you. So that covers what my kids picked as their favorite readers and read alouds from the past few years that they could think of. I hope that gave you some good ideas on things to look at for yourself and your family. Definitely don't forget to check out the playlist below to see what all the other homeschool moms are recommending. I will probably be taking notes. I'm sure I will fill my shelf with more books than I can read to my kids. I think that's the problem with homeschooling. There are so many good books, so many good resources, and you really just cannot fit them all in, but we do try. So thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope to see you all in future videos. Bye, everyone.